Welcome to Lolo's List of Small Delights, episode number 1. Just to recap, this is the series of videos where I will introduce one by one the small delights in life. Maybe not so significant, maybe not so obvious, and sometimes very quirky. The goal for the video is for everybody to have some fun, learn about something new, or see something that you already know about in a brand new light. Ultimate goal of this video would be that if you've not had that delight in your life, maybe after watching this video you would like to try it out. You know, just bring a tiny bit of joy in life before COVID is ended and we could all go back to traveling, if that is something you're into, like I do. The topic of the first small delight is Dwarf Fortress. Friends and family who are not gamers, please don't leave. I know many of you are not and are not interested in games, but if there's one game you need to know about or spend time learning about, I feel like this is a special one. So let me switch to my game journalism voice. Dwarf Fortress is a sandbox word simulation and text-based indie game created by two brothers, Tom and Zach Adams. It was first released in 2006. Since its release, it has acquired a legendary status in a tight-knit community. Its classic two-dimensional retro visuals, text-based graphics, and the sheer depth of the content even attracted the attention of Museum of Modern Art, where the game has been exhibited. The museum even asked the creators for the source code to be added to their permanent collection. The game takes place in a procedurally generated fantasy world, where the environment, oceans, mountains, trees, minerals, hundreds of years of experience, wars, conflicts, diplomacy, historical figures were all uniquely generated at the start of the game. It is said that Dwarf Fortress is the inspiration for Minecraft, another much more famous procedurally generated sandbox game. In this world, as the name of the game indicates, players control a group of dwarves in attempts to build prosperous fortresses, which really sounds easier than it is. For me, two aspects make Dwarf Fortress the most unique and fascinating game I ever played. And as someone who has been a gamer since Pokemon Green Japanese edition came out on Game Boy in '96, I have played a few games. Firstly, Dwarf Fortress has the reputation of being the most complex and difficult game to play in history. It is not difficult in the sense that it is very technical, like the history of hardcore players speedrunning games like Mario and Contra. It is difficult to learn just how to play this game. The barrier to entry here is insanely high. Here, some fans on the internet remade the meme, I think, created for the infamous Icelandic game EVE Online, which I also did play when I was young, to illustrate the learning curve of Dwarf Fortress. With this in mind, the goal I set for this small delight series, where I hoped everybody could try out the delights introduced, might not be so realistic for this particular episode. But the second aspect might just be intriguing enough. Once the 100 years of Dwarven history has been written for you, you can now enter the game. Not really, there are still a million things you have to do before you could really play, but for the sake of simplicity, let's just say that you do. Every single individual that you encounter in the world, dwarves, elves, human, animals, monsters, beasts, all has their own history, their own unique name, preferences, relatives, family, personality, and skills. They interact with each other, get into arguments, commit murders, fall in love, have kids, create masterpieces of arts, and throw in tantrums. Mostly, danger, tragedy, and doom await, but that is fun. There are many crazy in-game stories that illustrate the steps. The most famous one is perhaps the mysterious deaths of fortress cats, where the gamers reported a bug that the domestic cat population in their game kept on dying for no apparent reasons. After some detective investigation by the two game creators, they realized that the cats died from alcohol poisoning, as they licked their little paws after wandering around in the fortress tavern. If there is anything you need to know about dwarves, that is that they are alcoholics. No, seriously, they will literally go insane if not supplied with liquor. So the floors of any given well-run fortress would be covered in spilled drinks. Because of these steps and the crazy bizarre things that happens in this game on a daily basis, this game has inspired a lot of storytelling and memes, and this leads us to the origin story of how I got to play Dwarf Fortress.
Flashback.
One evening, I noticed my husband Niels watching a rather bizarre YouTube video while washing dishes. It has some hand-drawn, crayon-colored character illustrations on top of a matrix-looking interface, and a master storyteller guy was telling the story in the background.
Running around like idiots. Well, you know what that means. Could somebody come down here and pull the lever for a tank too, please? Thank you very much. Oh, here they come.
So I walk into the kitchen, hearing this video, these videos being blasted on speaker while him washing dishes. I'm like, what is this? And he's telling me, oh, there's this guy who, you know, plays this extremely difficult game called Dwarf Fortress. Not many people play it, but he plays it, and because it's a text-based game, there's not a lot of graphics, but it has an incredible story because, you know, all this history are generated, people interact, you can build fortresses in it, and he comes up with the stories based on very much what's happening in the game, so he doesn't really make it up. And he used those characters that's generated in the game, and he makes it more visual, you know, and he voice act to it, and it's very fun to watch. He's incredibly good at it. And I started to, you know, watch this channel as well and watch this incredible guy play this incomprehensible game. And I was like, babe, why don't you play this game? It seems so fun, you know, like the possibilities are endless. And Niels was like, no, I cannot play this game. It's too difficult, it's too complicated. And you know who likes a good challenge? So I downloaded the game and I tried to play it, and I couldn't understand anything that is happening. The control of this game, it's probably the worst UI I have ever experienced, and the UX is non-existent in this.
3 hours later.
This is too much. I cannot do this. So I've abandoned it. And I couldn't understand all those text symbols on the map. I couldn't understand it, and I stopped playing it. But we kept on watching the channel, so Dwarf Fortress never really left my mind.
6 months later.
2020, when the pandemic hit, and we didn't really have much else to do leisure-wise, you know, I decided to give it another shot.
24 hours later.
I found this tutorial, a marvelous series of 70+ videos describing I'm pretty sure it's not every single aspect of the game, but if you watch the first 50 of it, you can play the game. You can probably even play the game if you just watch the first 30-ish of it, but if you really want to get into a nitty-gritty, I recommend you to watch the entire playlist. Alright guys, welcome to my laptop. For the last part of the video, I would like just to show you one of the fortress that I built and tell you one crazy story that I encountered early in game in one of my former fortresses. Okay, if you can see my screen here, there is something called lazy new pack. It is something that many of the Dwarf Fortress players use to make this game slightly easier to play. So there are a bunch of different settings that could help you to easily control the game. Most handy of all, there are a bunch of graphic like texture packs that changes how the game looks. So it's not just symbols and numbers, and makes it much more graphical to look at. I'll show you in a second. So yeah, I have played quite a few fortresses. I kept just 2 of them here because the game is actually quite buggy, at least playing on a Mac. from time to time my game crashed for no reason. This fortress actually is also the case. You're looking at the fortress. If I let the game run, it is currently on pause. If I let the game run, it will just crash. And I could literally not play this fortress beyond this point in time, which is a real shame. But still, I think it gives you a good feel of how the game looks like. So as the fortress is a 2D game, it sort of, you can only see one Z level at a time. So as you go upwards, you can see these green things are trees, and the blue parts is not water, it's like empty space, and you going up into the, you can only see the treetops, and then you come downwards, you can slowly see the water, the ground where there are grass. And that brings us to this is the sea level where my dwarfs is first entering its fortress. If I zoom in here, you can see here is a little drawbridge that is currently down. That's why you're looking at it from top down basically. And we can see here there is a sage called Adil, who is currently storing item in a stockpile, and he is storing some stray donkey bone. And here is a little trap that I try to set up with a little peacock in the middle, so when enemies come, usually there are a lot of goblin siege during the game, they will come and try to take your fortress once in a while, and they will maybe get into this spiral of a maze, and I set a lot of traps in there that could maybe keep them outside long enough for me to close this drawbridge and protect my dwarfs. But anyhow, let's kind of take a look inside. Here is, as you can see, a downward slope that leads deeper into the fortress. As I said before, dwarfs live underground mostly. And you can see here are all our livestock that we have been raising indoors, our little bit of farmland, and a dwarf here with a magenta exclamation mark. That's very interesting. It says that he is possessed by unknown forces, is in a strange mood, and he's a great miller, high master woodcrafter. So what that means is that from time to time a dwarf would enter into such a strange mood, and they would demand a bunch of materials. It could be wood, it could be silk, it could be gems, and they need those materials to make a masterpiece artifact that they had been thinking for a long time, or that just came to them. And if you don't have, God forbid, one of the materials that he or she requires, this dwarf would literally slowly descend into insanity, and that would entail he or she stop drinking, stop eating, and die a slow and very public death in the fortress, and that upsets everybody, and that could lead to violence. So it's very important that you take care of those dwarfs that's in strange mood. And so we go one Z level down, we can see here's a place where we keep a lot of cages and all our prisoners from previous siege, and many puppies. Cute. Many puppies have been born because I forgot to neuter the dogs. Let's go one more down, and one more down, and one more down, and here we have our production floor. So we have a workers' canteen with the table and the chairs, a lot of barrels that's mostly storing wine and food, and you can see many workshop here, distiller, as well as kitchen, as well as crafts workshop, mason's workshop without the stones, their guild house, where the unionized workers would meet. And here are our clothing industry. There are a lot of little wooden bins that store freshly made clothes for the dwarfs. And here's a little interesting part. This is the first time I experimented with the mechanics or the machinery aspect of the game. We have a mini waterfall or water mist generator here there are quite a lot of screw pumps that is passing 1 unit of water, this blue thing here, in a circle. And I've dug holes here in the 4 corners or 8 corners to the floor below. And those water, as it's being passed around in a circle above, some of the water will fall down in those holes and create these things. It's called mist, so water mist, and dwarves love those. And it makes them, puts them in much better mood as they come in here. So I last minute built a canteen as well as a library here. So as you can see, now we're in the living quarter. There are a lot of bedrooms. The dwarfs all have a little chest, a little cabin. Nothing too luxurious, but that keeps them very happy. We're going upwards. There is a praying space where the religious folks could pray. We also have a hospital that is quite frequently used, given the amount of violence that's frequently occurring. The main library, where we have all the bookshelves here, some statues. And here is the corridor of all our magnificent masterpieces or artifacts that have been produced, all kinds of strange things that has been produced by the dwarves who have been in strange mood. And here's our grand dining hall. You can see all the liquor in the middle, long dining tables, and people just kind of socialize, sing songs. Bard would be, elf poet would be reciting poems, and people sing songs and tell stories from beyond the fortress. And then we will go to the more sinister aspect of this fortress. As you can see, I showed you the main entrance for the civilian dwarves, but in fact we have another entrance down below here. So this is the entrance that will be kept open when the siege comes, and it does link into the actual fortress, so the enemies would enter this way, and this drawbridge would be wide open. And you can see there are a couple traps. That's how some of those goblins you saw earlier got into the cage, and down both staircases they will come to this little trap that I have built, inspired by the King Trap episode of the YouTube series that I showed you before. And here along the winding corridors, there are many more traps. Here also I have dug a canal around this entire trap, so once I open these drawbridges here, this entire place will be flooded. And it's underground enough that the water will not really affect the rest of the fortress. But the most sinister thing I have done perhaps is setting a meeting hall here that is designated. This is the only place where visitors from outside of the fortress could come and admire the great fortress that I have built here. So all these people you see standing here socializing, artists, warrior, artists, they are all not my dwarves. They are from neighboring village and towns, and they are here as a buffer. So when the goblins really come from here, before they get flooded, they also have to deal with all my visitors, and that would significantly slow down the time where they will make just this teeny tiny staircase that links to upstairs, more traps, and this is my military quarter. So I must say this place is pretty well defended, probably why it's been maybe 60 years, no, not so long, but at least a couple of decades that this fortress has survived. And here are my military training, archer range, and people sparring with each other. And yeah, that's how the fortress could look like. It's really not that bad. I know that I said you have to watch like 30, 50 videos. Don't listen to me. I'm a slow learner. Just download the game. It's for free. Download the texture pack. Watch 1 or 2 tutorials, and maybe you really love this fantasy world. So the story I wanted to tell from one of my early fortresses, not this one, It's the mystery of the disappearing engraver. One day, I got a notification, and it says that blah blah blah, cannot remember this dwarf's name, bless his heart, has been missing for a week. And I was very confused because usually you will get like reports in game like this every time people are fighting or violence has taken place in the fortress, and I haven't seen anything, violent or nothing bad as far as I can see has happened. So in Dwarf Fortress, 99 out of 100 times when they say somebody has been missing, that pretty much means that the person's dead. So I was confused for some time, and a couple days later in game, a couple minutes my time, the other engraver in the fortress got into a strange mood, like this guy. And very quickly I supplied everything he needed, and he created a rather simple artifact, a rock cup, I think. And on it he has engraved a picture. It's a picture depicting the death of the missing guy who has been crushed by a drawbridge. It sort of reminded me like a couple hours before. When I was building the first drawbridge to secure our fortress, I was wanting to try out, if the lever works, like if it can really securely close when enemies come. So I told the dwarf to pull the lever and see if it closes. And I think the two engravers, they were friends, were working close to the drawbridge, engraving the stone on the ground. And I think at the time I was raising the bridge and putting them down, it just completely crushed one of those dwarf into not even bits, because there was no body to be found. He was atomized. Yeah, so mystery solved, Just anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lolo's list of small delights. I know it is super bizarre. I hope you had fun learning about this game that you otherwise wouldn't have heard of, and maybe you would like to try it out. Please do leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think, and subscribe to the channel because there will be more video coming out. I am working on the next one already. Thanks very much, and I will see you around.